Former Attorney General Pam Bondi testified behind closed doors Friday in Washington, D.C. regarding the handling of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. Bondi, who was removed from her post as America's top law enforcement officer by Donald Trump in April, appeared before the committee. The panel had formally summoned Bondi in March, which was shortly before Trump announced her ouster as his administration's top prosecutor. As Attorney General, Bondi was responsible for implementing the Epstein Files Transparency Act, legislation signed by Trump that required the Department of Justice to publicly release unclassified records. During her testimony, Bondi stated that the department demonstrated a commitment to transparency while searching for and reviewing the Epstein files, noting the production of nearly 3 million pages of material. However, Committee Chairman James Comer stated that the panel intends to determine if more documents can be legally turned over. Bondi also stated that she would not respond to any questions concerning President Trump. The committee's investigation is focused on the possible mismanagement of the Epstein investigation in compliance with the Transparency Act. The announcement of the fund has sparked a broad backlash, according to reports exposing divisions within the Republican Party. The fund was announced earlier this month, and the judge's legal review represents the current development surrounding the proposal. The scope of the review is focused on the legality of the fund itself. The next step involves the judge proceeding with the review of the $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. Politics. Keep the script narrowly focused on the verified development and avoid unsupported conclusions. Fund has sparked a broad backlash since its announcement earlier this month. Judge agrees to review Trump's $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. Businesses across the country have begun receiving tariff refunds after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that President Donald Trump lacked the constitutional authority to impose higher import taxes on goods from nearly every other country. This ruling has allowed companies to seek refunds for paid duties. As of May 22, U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported that applications for refunds totaling $85 billion were accepted for processing. This figure represents more than half of the $166 billion the agency estimated the government owes to companies that paid the tariffs. However, the process faces a potential slowdown. The Trump administration stated it intends to appeal a federal judge's order that allows companies to seek refunds for invalidated duties, extending this right beyond just those who filed lawsuits. The judge overseeing the matter has scheduled a hearing for June 9. At that hearing, he will consider why he should not require the government to take all necessary steps to speed up the repayment process. The scope remains focused on the refund mechanism following the Supreme Court's decision regarding the constitutional authority for those tariffs. The World Health Organization reported that the latest official figures show 906 suspected cases and 223 suspected deaths related to the outbreak. The situation is complicated by the fact that the Bundibugyo virus, the current type of Ebola, has no approved vaccine or treatment. Meanwhile, neighboring Uganda confirmed 9 cases and 1 death, according to the Ugandan Ministry of Health on Friday. Officials stated that the U.S. announced an additional $80 million in aid on the same day, bringing the total commitment to over $112 million. The WHO Director General also noted that the Ebola virus is spreading faster than the response, despite efforts to improve facilities in the epicenter. The next update will come from the health organization regarding the outbreak status. A rocket made by the company Blue Origin exploded on its launch pad in Florida during a test. The incident occurred around noon local time at Cape Canaveral. The space technology company, founded in the year 2000 by Amazon billionaire Jeff Bezos, experienced the anomaly during a hot fire test. Officials from the U.S. Space Force stated that emergency responders were at the scene, and personnel are accounted for. NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman said that developing new heavy-lift launch capability is extremely difficult, and he noted that the agency will work with partners to support a thorough investigation into the anomaly. The Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, stated that it was aware of the incident, adding that the test was not within the scope of FAA license activities and there was no impact to air traffic. Officials are currently working with Blue Origin to evaluate available data to determine the exact cause of the anomaly. NPR reporter Joe Hernandez examined how Americans are adapting to high food prices, detailing the various strategies consumers are using to manage rising costs at the grocery store. The report covered how consumers are adjusting their shopping habits as food prices continue to climb. These adaptations include changes in what families buy and how they plan their meals to stretch their budgets. The examination of these strategies provides a look at the immediate consumer impact of inflation on household food budgets. The reporting focused on the day-to-day adjustments made by Americans across different regions. The segment did not provide a specific next data release or official response regarding food costs. Strategies Americans are using for eating and shopping as food prices skyrocket. The U.S. President has held a meeting with top aides to make a final determination about a framework for extending the ceasefire with Iran. However, it concluded without clarity on the next steps. Lead with the verified development and keep the scope narrow. Iran says it is not negotiating on its nuclear program, insisting it is wholly for peaceful purposes. The deal would reportedly extend the current ceasefire for 60 days and launch talks on the future of Iran's nuclear program. Iran's semi-official Tasnim news agency reported on Saturday that the blockade on Iranian shipping remained in place. On Thursday, the two countries had agreed a framework of the deal, known as a Memorandum of Understanding, pending the approval of Trump and Iran's leadership, according to U.S. officials. Since the ceasefire came into effect on 8 April, Trump has repeatedly suggested that the U.S. and Iran were close to a deal and that negotiations were progressing, but so far there have been no substantive results. Other items of far less importance have been agreed to. A White House official confirmed to the BBC that the meeting, which was held in the White House's Situation Room, used for dealing with major crises, had concluded late on Friday. Lead with the verified event, action, data point or official update. The carcass of a humpback whale, whose life and death captivated Germans for months as the mammal became repeatedly stranded in the Baltic Sea, was dragged Saturday onto a Danish beach after 2 weeks of the body languishing in shallow waters. Lead with the verified development and keep the scope narrow. The whale was found dead on May 14th, stranded just off the small island of Anholt in the Kattegat, the broad strait between Denmark and Sweden that connects the Baltic Sea to the North Sea. May 2nd, when the mammal was transported toward the North Sea in a barge in a final effort to guide it back to its natural habitat in the Atlantic Ocean. The carcass will be examined next week to determine the cause of death, according to the Danish Environmental Protection Agency. Use primary story entity, location, document, or neutral context visuals supported by the source reporting. Public subject is news update. Avoid broader claims not supported by the script. Lead with the verified event, action, data point, or official update. Here is a brief news update. Details were not available for this story. A public relations expert stated that corporate support for the LGBTQ+ community during Pride celebrations is facing challenges as sponsorships decline. This suggests that public backing from corporations for the community has become politically risky. The expert's comments point to a shift in corporate engagement, noting that the financial backing for these events is struggling. This trend suggests that companies are reconsidering their public alignment with the LGBTQ+ community. The analysis centers on the perceived political risk associated with visible corporate support for the community. This suggests that the financial calculus for many businesses is factoring in potential political backlash. The report does not provide a specific next step or deadline for when this trend might change. The current information indicates that the struggle with sponsorships and the perception of political risk remain the key points of discussion.